Today's guests on the Life and the Living podcast are Peter and Mira Griffiths, who are based in Berlin. Now, Peter and Mira are coaches and facilitators. They work with leadership teams and they work with individuals. But their promise that they give to their clients is that they won't give them more to think about, but we will help you take away what is getting in the way of your life. And which is a big promise, and they really deliver on that to their clients. What we actually talk about in the interview, which I think is really, really valuable, is to have a better understanding of how we discover what is holding us back to become what we can become. And then the process that we can go through in order to unlock that and to create a new way of thinking. We also focused in quite a bit on terms of how, once you have done it, how do you sustain that in your life so that you don't fall back into the old pattern of behavior. So it is about sustaining it. And the other issue that we talk about, amongst other issues that we talked about, is, engagement. We recognize that engagement is a big issue with teams. Globally, the level of engagement is terribly low. So how do you get real engagement in your teams? How do you engage your people in the work that you're doing? And how do you keep them engaged? What are the things you should look out for? What are the things that you should be doing proactively in order to grow that? So a lot of really, really good stuff. And if you want to get more interviews, then go to the site, www.johnmurphyinternational.com. And there's loads of resources there. If you want to reach out to me in terms of having a conversation about your own career, your own business, and optimizing the performance of yourself and your team, then you can reach out to me at john@johnmurphyinternational.com. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy the conversation with Mira and Peter. So Peter and Mira, thank you so much for joining me here this morning on a Life and a Living podcast. It's a great honor to have you.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thanks.
Not at all. Listen, it's good. How are things in Germany, in Berlin, as we speak?
Great. Actually, the lockdown is starting to ease, so I guess only time will tell. So people are actually a lot happier right now. Cafes have actually started to slowly open, and things, for whatever reason, seem to be quite normal now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. At least the start. Hopefully we don't all get because that's kind of happening around the world, but hopefully we don't all get a backlash. Anyway, listen, that will be whatever it'll be, and none of us know that. But just if I look at the work that you guys do, and your promise is that, we won't give you, just let me read it, we won't give you more to think about or do. We will help you to take away what is getting in the way of your life now and the life you want to live. Mm-hmm. Which is a really big promise. So how do you do that?
What I've noticed over the years of my work with people is that when people don't understand what is getting in the way, they tend to be doing wrong things. Mm-hmm. So what we are doing is really explaining and getting people to understand and realize what is going on, how is their mind working, what is going internally, and it's interesting that once they realize what's going on, they just stop doing things that are getting in their way. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason this comes to mind, but I remember working with a person quite a few years ago, and she was struggling with losing weight, and that was getting in her way of her personal life, her work life. She was talking about it and thinking about it all the time. She felt she was a bad person and useless and all of that. And once we just sat down for half an hour, and I explained her how the anxiety works and how is her thinking working and who is she and how is she creating her reality. And she started losing weight with nothing to do about it. She didn't even go on a diet. It just didn't make sense to her to eat so much and so bad food anymore.
So if you take that example, Mira, that's a really interesting example, because here you're talking about somebody that wanted to lose weight, and you would say typically, well, okay, when I look at your eating, and you kind of go all left brain stuff, look at your eating, and then go on a diet, and you do A, B, C, D, and ergo you get the result.
Yeah.
You went a very different track in the sense of you kind of began to kind of dig into what was the mental blocks about that. So two questions of that. How do you actually get to what is that individual's mental block? So how do you define what it is for that person? Because I'm sure it's different for different people. How do you do that? And then how did that, in that case, translate to losing the weight?
Well, there's something that I found same for everyone. We believe that our thinking and feeling is telling us something about the future and about ourselves. And this is the same for all of us. We tend to think that our beliefs are true, that the way we see the world and the way we see the world is absolutely true. So where I go first is explaining that this is not how we function as humans. We can think anything and believe it's true and behave as if it's true. I can think that I need to, just before we started recording, we were talking about people that feel really uncomfortable when they can't keep their work persona on when they're working from home. And if I believe and think that I have to be a certain way in order to be recognized, in order to do my work, in order to appear confident and that I know what I do, if I believe that they all have to be in place, if something isn't in the place, I might be doing all sorts of stuff internally and externally that will be getting in the way of my best performance.
And when you think about, sorry, I don't interrupt you, but when you think about it, it just occurred to me when you were talking that what I believe in many situations is as a consequence of a lot of different things, right? So it's kind of layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of, experience, context, environment, upbringing. And I hate that actually upbringing, because always kind of you blame your parents and everything, which I think is really unfair. But you know what I mean? It is kind of the environment is we grow up, and also kind of learned behavior that we've kind of put on ourselves. So, okay, you can tell me that logically, what I'm believing isn't what I should be believing or isn't helpful to me. But how do I kind of get rid of all of those layers that I've just accumulated, over the years?
Insight.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an insight, or anybody else listening, have you ever had an insight about something that you're doing wrong, or realize that you're thinking something that isn't true, and then you just went, oh my God?
Yeah, I do. And there's part of me kind of says, yes, I can have that insight intellectually, but actually to engage with it, I've got to have it emotionally, So sometimes I think and listen, I'm as guilty as anybody else, is that I get caught up in my left brain. So I kind of go through the whole logic thing. But for a lot of the stuff, it's not about logic. I might know that it's not helpful, but how do I help myself not do it?
And I think this is exactly what you said. It's take the logic away and quiet down. And this is where I find this is where the impact is, when people quiet down and stop thinking and start listening.
I find this fascinating. I mean, this is a real area that I love, because just what you said, that quieting down that voice. But that voice is a kind of a fairly aggressive little bugger, and kind of doesn't really want to go away because it chatters fairly loudly. So what are the tools that I can use to kind of lower the volume of that voice and to diminish the impact, and then engage with the new belief that I want to embrace?
Again, going back to what we called our business, the mind takeaway. Yeah, in the past, we would have had a shopping list of tools or systems or things we could say, right, these are the steps you need to take. But what we got curious about is all these things are kind of good, but they weren't 100% effective. So what we do with our clients is we allow them to experience. That's it. So instead of giving them a shopping list of things to do that might get them quiet, we just tell them to become a bit of a connoisseur of listening to their own inner voice, so to speak. And then by doing that, you just get curious. So as Mira said, when someone thinks that they have to wear a particular persona or hat in a business context, we just get them more comfortable when they get those uncomfortable feelings. You know, it's about getting curious. What's all that about? And the more they get comfortable with just hearing that inner voice, the more actually it occurs to them that they don't actually need to do anything to change it. Because as you said, John, we all have those, you know, loud voices in our head.
Yeah.
And just as Mira said, by getting quiet, you kind of tune in to the good stuff. So when you go into intellect and trying to problem solve, obviously you can mitigate that. And that's why we don't give our clients a shopping list of things to do, because it just gets them really confused.
Yeah.
When we say get quiet, we're actually not saying sit on a cloud and meditate, although that stuff's really cool. We're just saying get curious, explore what that inner voice is telling you, and then just put the handbrake on and say, is that actually true? But in a loving way, and not often on it. Just say, you know, when I got up today and I wasn't feeling, you know, my best self, what's all that about? Is it really telling me that I'm not a great leader and I shouldn't go in and, you know, take this meeting? Or is it just saying I'm just having those feelings like anyone else, and it's actually the most normal thing in the world?
Yeah, because I think that your business, the mind takeaway, I think it's a great name, and I think that what it stands for is something fantastic, because, you know, to an extent, when you talk about, you know, understanding what holds people back, if we can release that on people, their potential, you're really kind of releasing a massive amount of potential. But in you know, in a sense, I suppose one thing is that, you know, I can't know what I don't know, right? So how do you help me find out what's holding me back, even if I'm not actually consciously aware of what it is that's holding me back?
We get curious as well. And
Curiosity comes up a lot, doesn't it?
and I used to think that there is a certain thing that I need to bring out from people, and I would go fishing for a certain thing, and that would be my limitation of that client. But when I went in with, again, quiet myself down and just really following my intuition and getting curious. I mean, following intuition, getting curious often comes very close together, if not the same. And then people come up with some stuff that I could never think about. You know, because as you said, you know, we all have different experience of life that creates our reality and the way we see the world. And I have no idea what is in the mind and what's stopping my brother who grew up with me and not somebody that I met a few times in my life.
I mean, when you think about the work that you do, and it's kind of, you know, getting people into that quiet space, you know, one is actually, okay, doing the work with you, and then it's, you know, what tools, what advice do you give to people to actually sustain that? Because I mean, they come in, they work with you, you know, presumably you're not intending them to stay with you for the rest of their lives. Well, they might, but you know what I mean. It's not actually, you're not actually creating a dependency. You're actually giving them tools to actually do that themselves. In the same way, you know, when I'm working with the clients, it's not that you create a dependency. It's actually to give them the tools to actually do it themselves. But so when I'm listening to you, I'm kind of hearing, okay, that's fine. I get that. So what tools do you give me? But also the other thing, part of that question is, does this demand that we take time out for ourselves on a regular basis to reflect? Because, you know, we get in this kind of busy, all action, agenda full, you know, back-to-back meetings, you know, all of that sort of stuff. How do you get people to integrate that time to reflect into their schedule?
Well, funny enough, when you get curious and you go on this exploration for yourself, what we notice with our clients, and Mira touched on it before, they come with a shopping list. We all do. You know, if I'm not seeing it, you know, you don't know what your blind spots are. You think you do, right? And then any good coach would just listen at a deep level and ask you the right questions. But once you get to a point where you got some clarity about a particular thing that you were stuck with, all we say to our clients is, what else? You know, you can do that. What about the other aspects of your life? We understand you as a leader, but what about your personal life? And what we say to them is, you know, when you can carve out that you time, what about just getting curious and going on an exploration of what's that going to do as well? And it just blows me away what happens because, like Mira said, for example, when I give up smoking was a good example, even for me, right? This was a good one because, again, I was very focused on one particular thing. And if I'm honest, I struggled with trying to stop smoking for many years until I stopped seeing it as an issue. And then one day it just was a light thing. It just occurred to me one day. I got up and I said, nothing on it. I'm going to stop. And this is what happens with our clients as well. They resolve one thing in their life. And because they understand or they see their own experience and its reality because they've seen it in their life, other things start to shift in other aspects of the life as well. And that automatically gets you curious, right? I know it does because one thing disappears and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's resolved. What next? And then,
Okay, so it is that curiosity, and then just touch on, Peter, maybe the kind of how you get people to sustain that kind of curiosity, that it just doesn't become a one-off event, that it just that you did and then you've moved on, you're on to something else. How do you get your clients to sustain that in their lives?
We promote that people really, what you said just there, spend time with themselves. So it's something that for that person works. So it could be if somebody is a musician, you know, spend time doing music. If somebody likes to meditate, do that. If somebody likes to spend time in nature, do that. It's really, really important to get, as it's easy for us to get into business as well, even though, you know, we do this all the time. There are still moments and times where we get sidetracked with whatever is going on around us and the busyness of the world and lots of projects at the same time and all of that. But we know the other thing is understanding the feelings and understanding that when you feel that you are very busy, when you feel that you don't have time, when you feel worry and anxiety about the future and about what you're doing, stop. That's the best time to reflect. That's the best time because these are the moments where we make mistakes.
Yeah, because the temptation actually, when you feel like that, is actually to go faster and to do more. So it's counterproductive. Can I switch gear a little bit just to talk about, because I know that you guys work with teams, and I know one of the things that you do with teams is to really increase engagement. And you know, and that's a big issue. I mean, it's a big issue because of current circumstances, but it's a big issue anyway, right? I mean, beyond COVID. But I'm just wondering, because you know, I mean, the whole issue of engagement is a massive challenge to organizations, and we know all of the research which shows there's very low levels of engagement in teams globally, and even if you go down that country by country, there's no country that jumps out as being really good at it. So, how do you work with teams to increase that engagement?
good question. We work with the people that run the teams, the leadership teams, especially if we can. If we work directly with the team, it works as well. One of the things that's bandied about of late, you probably heard the term psychological safety, right? It's mentioned a lot, but again, what does that actually mean? So to unpack that, it's simply, if you're part of a team, you feel like you're actually adding value in that team. You feel safe that if you bring something to the table, you won't be judged. And the crucial bit of psychological safety, if you've made a mistake, that's, you know, you're not going to be taken away and reprimanded, but equally as well, that you understand if you're in a high performing team, that should you fail at something, that you just put your hand up because you're in a safe environment, and then what can I learn from it? But also, what can the team learn?
Yeah.
All of that sounds really great, right? But in reality, it's actually really difficult to get right, as you know, John.
Yeah. And I think actually some people, when you talk about, okay, it's a safe place, some people think that, that means kind of happy clappy. And it's not that, because actually a safe environment in a high performing team, it's a great place to be, but it's a tough place to be because you're held accountable, and it's very open and transparent. And, to me, if I bring it back to sport, I think one of the best books that I've read in regards to that is Legacy, which is about the All Blacks. John Kerr's book, where he spent 2 years with them. But you don't have to be a fan of rugby, or you don't have to be a fan of the All Blacks. But it's a fascinating story, and kind of read about how they get that level of engagement. And I think it's really because the standards that they hold themselves to are so high. So it is a safe place, but it's not necessarily an easy place to be. And I think there's a difference to that. But in terms of, what are the things that you see that increases engagement, and what are the things that you see that diminish it?
What increases engagement is actually when you get to really know people at a deeper level. So part of our work as well, and again, it can be seen as happy clappy, but lots of people band around this human connection and stuff like this. What is connection? For us, it's simply actually knowing the person next to you. So if you're a leader and you have responsibility as a people manager to look after all these people, yeah, I understand that when it gets to a certain level, and there's so many people, you can't know everyone at such a deep level. But just asking the right questions and being visible makes all of the difference. And again, if someone said to me, if I was going to bottle it, what really works for high performing teams is that you need to get to know each other. Because if you're in that environment and you are accountable and the accountability is high, you have to be able to trust that person next to you, right? And if that's the case, then you probably know them pretty well, right?
So what diminishes it?
The exact opposite, not really paying attention to the people in your team, surface level. So it's all a bit stiff. It's like, yeah, we know what the job is, but we don't.
Or transactional. It's just a transactional relationship. You turn up, deliver, and you get paid.
And it's an innocent thing that trickles in, but it happens quite commonly in big organizations. But if you want to completely stem that and bring everyone back to reality, and again, have them very, high performing and get the productivity back, you need to do exercises away from the business. So again, it's a tough one because you need to spend a bit of money on it. But crucially, even things as, taking them to the park, for example, taking the team out of their normal work environment. It might seem like an obvious thing to do, but it can be completely transformative. And that's what we suggest. If the budget's tight, we just say, look, when was the last time you got out and did something that's not related to your actual goal and KPIs? And they look at you like, well, that's kind of a waste of time. And I'm saying, well, is it? Let's explore that. And again, instead of having anything on it from our side, we're not trying to sell it, right? We just say to them, look, let's explore that, because honestly, if you try it out, you'll be amazed. And by flicking that switch of putting them in a completely different environment, it brings out the creativity, it drops all the ego and all the BS, right? And then you see the leaders, the people in there, they start to relax. And then guess what happens next? People start to just be comfortable. And then you get to know the person next to you without that massive shield above the face,
I mean, if you look at the environment we're in right now, and there's a lot of fear going around, and there's for some of the fear there's a basis for it. Some of the fear, like always, it's a rational fear, but it exists. So, I mean, what advice would you give to business leaders right now in terms of how they firstly manage their own fear and how they manage the fear of the people they have around them?
We've been talking about that a lot lately, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're just about the words that springs to mind is vulnerability. So just to explain that everyone feels vulnerable. And actually, as a leader, just to be clear, it's not a strategy, because people can fake it as well, you know, pretending, and it does happen, unfortunately. But what I'm saying is it's just being comfortable to show up and be okay when things are not quite working, and actually just explore that with your leadership team, and crucially, communicate that to the people in your business. That will absolutely destroy any barrier, and people will follow you, because they're more likely to trust someone who's being authentic, right? And that really does help. But also, I mean, it does require someone to step up, because it takes a lot of courage, you know, to be vulnerable in a business environment, right? I mean, I know I struggled with it in my early career, because
and it's something that actually we've spoken about this vulnerability before, but I think it's a huge part of it. But I think if leaders can actually acknowledge it to their people, that it, rather than kind of, you know, well, I don't feel it, you know, and kind of having the macho suit on, it doesn't really work. But that's great advice, I think, actually, being open about it. Two questions before we wrap up. Two questions that I ask everybody, because it's kind of partially is because I'm always fascinated by it. One is a book, and you can have one each. A book that you have read, other than something that you've written yourselves, but a book that you have read that's had an impact upon you, and why, and what impact it had on you.
Subliminal.
Okay.
Subliminal by, can you take it out?
Who's it by?
Just give me a second. It's Leonard Mlodinov.
Come across.
It's about the human mind. It's about why we think what we think, and how we create connections. There's another book from him called Elastic. He takes lots of research and it puts it in one book. So it's and what it got me to realize is that, you know, you perform and you behave the way you think. Your thinking affects your behavior and whatever you create. So the less limitations you have, more you can do. And what was really interesting for me seeing it there is that you don't have to change your thinking. You just need to drop out of it.
Oh, interesting. Do I need a degree in psychology to read the book, or?
Absolutely not.
Okay. That was the first question that came into my own head. I thought, God, it sounds interesting, but would I need to have studied psychology, which I haven't?
No, he actually isn't a psychologist. He's
not?
a physicist.
All right. Well, do I know? I don't need to be a physicist either, do I? To read it? Thank God for that. Okay, that's a good one. I haven't come across that before. Peter, for you?
It's a tough one. I guess when Mira was talking, I was thinking, which one would be really cool to pick? Because I like many books, right?
Yeah. Picking one is always a challenge.
I think Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. I'll be honest, I wasn't really a big fan of some of her other work, but this book blew my mind as a creative as well, and obviously having a music background. And she just explores her career as a writer, and also where creativity comes from. And she unpacks it in such a wonderful way that, it's very easy to understand. And I think for anyone who wants to innovate, or, you know, you hear this word disruption a lot, just read this book.
What's it called again?
Big Magic by Elizabeth.
Big Magic. Okay. I heard her, interesting you should mention her, I heard her being interviewed by Russell Brand recently. Did you listen to it? And yeah, it's actually worth listening to. But and I didn't hear the whole thing, but one of the things that she said in it, and I must say it stuck with me, was she said, you know, it was about actually publishing a book. And she said, you know, the self-doubt is always there. Kind of, is it good enough? You know, how will it be? And she said, you know, I recognize that books that I wrote a couple of years ago, if I look at them now, she said, I think, you know, I could have written that better, right? But she said, when she published, like Eat, Pray, Love, and some of the other stuff that she published, and she was saying, but you know, I actually came to terms with the fact that it was the best book I could write at that time.
Yeah.
Right. And I just thought that that was such a powerful thing for all of us. It's the best I can do right now. She said, at that time, I was not going to be a Hilary Mantel or somebody else, right? So I was not, wasn't going to be a Booker Prize or something like that, but it was the best book that I could write at that time. But she got it out and she published it. She didn't kind of hold it back until I dot every I and cross every T. And I thought that was fantastic.
That is understanding that we and everybody else does the best that they can in that moment with knowledge and understanding they have. So deepening the understanding of the life of ourselves opens up more possibility, but there is nothing to feel guilty about or judging ourselves or others, because we do the best that we can.
I think it's a great lesson to learn. And I think it's a great thing. It's something great to live by. So second question, sorry, I sidetracked off into something else, but the second question that I love listening to, the answer to, is daily rituals. Do you have them, and what are they?
I used to have them. I have them less and less, but there is something that I started doing fairly recently, and it is writing down in the morning. So in the morning, I'm usually in quite a creative space when I wake up. So I write down thoughts and ideas that I had just in between, actually at the time of waking up, when I'm still not totally awake. And I sometimes listen to some of the lectures and that I've been on before, or some interesting podcasts or something that will get me into quiet and creative space.
That's good. And you, Peter?
Going for a wander, physical activity, making music. Not always daily these days, unfortunately, because we've been so busy. But what I do daily is to get outside. Again, talking about switching my environment. Works wonders for just switching off my intellect, my mind wandering. When I come back, I'm usually in a better space to continue the day. So.
I find it fascinating, because what you find is that, when people I interview, they all have daily rituals. They're all different. And I find that is the fact, but they do have them, and there are things that kind of either bookend their day or get their day started. So listen, thank you for being a guest on the show. It's been fascinating. Where can people get in touch with you?
Well, the best place is the website, and then we have LinkedIn profiles.
Okay, so just give the website name, just people are listening, they can go straight. It'll be in the show notes, but we will, just so people are listening right now.
www.themindtakeaway.com.
Okay, I still think it's a great name. I love it. I love it. Mira and Peter, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to have you here on the show, and we'd love to come back and do it again. But thank you for being a guest this morning.
Thank you for having us.